So this is it. For the longest time, I believed full frame was everything. I believed so much in full frame cameras and full frame sensors. I chased it, I wanted it so bad, and I genuinely thought that once I finally got a full frame camera, my work would just magically level up. I thought I was going to get better images which were valid, more cinematic shots, I'm going to earn more respect once I start getting those cinematic shots, and I'm also going to get more clients. But a few years ago, I was in a real very serious situation. I wanted to buy a camera and I could not afford the full frame camera I wanted to buy at that point. So I was stuck between two options. Either I go for the Sony FX30 or I get the Sony A7 IV, which as at that point I was not really interested in what this A7 IV was offering, but that was what I could afford at the moment. Either I get the Sony FX30 or I get the Sony A7 IV, which was the full frame option I could really afford at the moment. Not that was what I would really want to buy. And as at that moment, something forced me to start thinking properly and not emotionally, but based on real world shooting, not just YouTube hype and a lot of talks on social media. So in this video, I want to break down the Sony FX30 and the Sony A7S III, not for YouTube drama, not to end full frame conversation, but to answer questions a lot of us are genuinely asking, and most importantly, help you to make better decisions and not a pressured one. So why am I making this comparison between the Sony FX30 versus the Sony A7S III? You see, the internet has already decided that full frame is better. Before you even shoot anything, before you even light a scene, or before you press record on your camera, we have been kind of trained on the social media network that the bigger your sensor, the better your images. That bigger sensor automatically means better images, more cinematic look, more professional work. But filmmaking, at the end of the day, it's not really just theoretical, it is mainly visual. So I decided to put this camera side by side, the Sony A7S III, which is a full frame camera, and the Sony FX30, which is a crop sensor camera with a super 35 sensor. For this video, I want to put them in the same scene, same lighting, same framing, and same intention behind every shot I'm going to be showing you today. And what I saw honestly surprised me, not because the Sony FX30 beats the Sony A7S III, but because the differences was not as loud as a lot of YouTubers have been shouting or have been making it seem like. Let's look at these two cameras in controlled environments where the difference really shrinks. In controlled environments, interviews, documentaries, branded content, indoor shoots, once you understand lighting, exposure, composition, and you understand how to pick the best lens for the project you're about to do, the difference between crop sensor and full frame cameras becomes really very small. And sometimes, in my opinion, these differences are even irrelevant, and this is where a lot of people get uncomfortable in this conversation of choosing between a full frame and a crop sensor camera. Because if your lighting is intentional, your framing is clean, and your story is clear, the sensor size stops being the star of the show. Yes, because full frame is not magic. It does not fix bad lighting, it does not rescue weak framing, it does not add emotion to a flat storytelling. So if those fundamentals are missing, full frame or having a full frame on your camera will not automatically just save you from having a bad image. So I decided to put these two images side by side for you to get which one is which between the crop sensor FX30 and the Sony A7S III. So these shots you're looking at on your screen, I posted them on Instagram, and after I posted those comparison shots and asked people to guess which one was full frame and which one was crop sensor, something very interesting happened. Like, people were guessing based on depth of field, skin tone, the vibe of the images, and a lot of assumption. But the truth is that you cannot judge sensor size by depth of field alone. What if one of the shots was done with an f1.2 lens and the other with a f2.8 lens? That alone can completely change the look of both cameras, and the sensor size does not really affect. You see, skin tones also have nothing to do with sensor size. They're about color science, color profile, and grading. Not whether a sensor is big or small is what will determine what the colors from the sensor is going to look like. And here is another uncomfortable truth about the Sony FX30. The Sony FX30 shoots 6K downsampled to 4K, while the Sony A7S III still shoots in the native 4K, and the Sony A7S III, even though it's a full frame camera. So when people say this one looks better, a lot of times they are really not reacting to what their eyes can see, in my opinion. So now let's be balanced, because I mean, full frame does matter. If you are shooting extremely low light condition, if you are shooting in uncontrolled environments, very shallow depth of field is what you want, or you are a documentary filmmaker and you shoot a lot of fast-paced run and gun situation, yes, I think to an extent full frame cameras are going to help you. But even though I still know a lot of documentary filmmakers that use, Red Komodo X and FX30 and other full frame or Super 35 sensor to shoot, but here's the part people don't really talk about enough, that most videographers are not even shooting, run and gun and situations they can light every day. Most people watching these videos are either shooting interviews, documentaries, events, content, branded videos, and most of these require you to set up your lighting and also control your environment. And in this situation, light controls matter more than the sensor size. I have seen a lot of crop sensor cameras perform insanely well because the lighting was intentional, and I have seen full frame footages fall apart because the fundamentals and the basic settings were not gotten right by the filmmaker, the videographer, or the cinematographer. And also there's this misconception about low light. Low light does not always mean no light. If your solution to wrong lighting is a bigger sensor, I think you are solving the wrong problem. So let me tell you a story. A media company hired me to shoot a corporate event highlights few years ago, and after delivering, the CEO called me to ask me what camera I used, and I told him I used the Sony FX30. He liked the results so much that he asked me to help them buy 3 units of the same unit of FX30. But because I did not know the skill level of their staff, I advised them to go for the Sony FX3. Instead of struggling with the Sony FX30 like a lot of people claim, they bought the Sony FX3s, good lenses. I also got them some 24 to 70 G master lenses, solid setup, and weeks later I saw the videos they were producing on their Instagram, and honestly the FX30 footage I shot looked far better than what they were producing with the Sony FX3. Not because the FX30 is better than the FX3, but because the skill beats game, and that experience completely changed how I see cameras, and that is why I'm even making this video. So another thing people ignore is lens economics, like I like to call it, or choosing your lens, knowing the best lens to choose. With crop sensor, you get cheaper lenses, faster primes are more affordable. Building a full system is easier with crop sensor cameras because you can easily get a lens, a body, a mic with the same money you used to buy just one full frame body. A 16mm f1.4 on a crop sensor gives you a clean full frame equivalent of 24mm. If you want wider, you can go for 10mm, and it's as simple as that. So trying to get the same speed and quality on full frame, you're going to be spending significantly more than you're going to be spending when you're shooting on crop sensor or when you're buying a crop sensor gear. And that money would have gone into lighting, audio, storage, education, and those things will improve your work faster than just acquiring a camera with bigger sensor. So I think I should just conclude like this. Here's my honest conclusion. If I was starting videography today, knowing what I know now, I don't think I will rush into buying full frame cameras. I would pick a crop sensor camera like the Sony FX30, invest in good, affordable lenses, learn lighting properly, master exposure and composition, focus on storytelling, not because I don't like full frame, not because full frame is bad, but because the intentions of a filmmaker, the intentions of a cinematographer matters more than hype when you're getting equipment or when you're getting a camera. When you finally move to full frame, it should be because your work demands it, not because Instagram, YouTube, or TikTok pressured you to, buy the camera. camera. And that is the difference between just upgrading with intention and upgrading out of your insecurity, which you should not be doing. Before you spend your hard-earned money, ask yourself, if nobody told me which camera this was shot on, would I honestly see the difference? Because filmmaking is visual, like I said earlier, and not really theoretical. And if you are still watching this video, thank you so much. That means you enjoy my content. My name is Samfriend Ojo, and I'm a documentary filmmaker based in Abuja, Nigeria. I make a lot of content teaching beginner filmmakers, and cinematographers online, and also teaching you the basics of filmmaking, the basics of cinematography that you need to know. I do a lot of gear reviews to make you make better choices on the kind of cameras you should be buying and other gears you should be buying. You can follow me on Instagram, TikTok, here on YouTube. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and see you in my next video.